Okay, now my important responsibility this morning in this conference is to welcome a very special guest. And if I can just mention, Michael, Gloria Chen, your mother, whom I was hoping to be able to introduce to this group this morning. But I have a present for her, and I'd like you to take it back as our gift with the respect that we owe her. Now, Michael Chen's, if I may talk about your mother just for a minute, Michael. Michael, mother, Gloria, the mother of 9 children. A long, long time ago, she was the financial assistant of my eldest brother, who was 80 the day before yesterday. And for a long time, he had a business in Jamaica. And Gloria Chen, having worked for my brother at a very early time in her life, went on to be the builder and primary owner of the largest supermarket company in Jamaica. And it's a hugely successful business. And we would like very much for you, Michael, to carry our respects for the great supermarket chief that she has become with, of course, the rest of her family and you in Jamaica. But Michael is Gloria's firstborn son, and he's the guy that's come here today to talk to us. And I'd like to welcome you personally, Michael, very much indeed. Michael, as you will know, is one of the most outstanding entrepreneurs and business leaders in Canada today. He's one of the most generous sponsors of the arts. He's one of the most enlightened, if I might say, investors in Canada, especially when it comes to the retail food business. And he and his wife, Sonia, are 2 of Hillary's and my most exciting new friends. Michael's mutual funds account for 14 billion of Canadians' personal savings. And included in this 14 billion is the hugely significant, almost $1 billion worth of Loblaw stock, or 6% of the value of Loblaw companies, making Michael's mutual funds our second largest shareholder. I asked Michael to join us here today, firstly, to tell us a little about himself and what drives him. Secondly, to tell us how he built his company. And finally, as a shareholder, and a major shareholder, what he expects from all of us at Loblaw's in the years ahead. Michael, will you come up?
Everything that I have accomplished here is a function of one thing. Starting early in my career, I had a project, and the project was to build the best reputation possible. Good morning. Thank you very much for having me here this morning. In fact, I think I should be saluting all of you guys, simply because the last 5 years in the investment business have been horrible. And we are still at the forefront of performance thanks to our large investment in Loblaws. So on behalf of nearly 1 million Canadians, thank you very much for doing what you do every day so well. Now, whenever I sit with a client around the kitchen table, and I still do have clients that I advise, my clients always say to me, Mike, I have 3 requirements of you as my financial advisor. Need number 1, I have 3 needs. Need number 1, Mike, is that I need for you to preserve my capital. So however you invest my money, make sure you do it in such a way that my capital is preserved. I hate to lose money. Need number 2, Mike, is that I want to make sure that however you invest my money, over the medium to long run, I get a real above average rate of return on my money, on my capital, because you are now in charge of whether I, at the age of 65, retire in dignity or not. So, again, Loblaw Company, in the mutual fund that I manage personally, which is the AIC Advantage Fund, represents 14% of the mutual fund, and that is unheard of in the mutual fund world. So again, on behalf of 1 million Canadians, we appreciate what you do every single day. Now, as a business person, as an investor, I start off with an assumption with respect to our own businesses and with respect to businesses that we invest in. And the assumption is that every single business will ultimately regress to mediocrity and eventual extinction. That's the starting position. So the question is, why is that? Well, it's simply that over time, every business becomes less focused. Over time, natural. Over time, every business will become less disciplined. Natural. Over time, every business becomes less passionate. Natural. Over time, every business will become less committed. Over time, every business will become less courageous, less entrepreneurial, natural. Over time, every business will become less dedicated and have a less positive attitude. So for those reasons, my conclusion is that my starting position is every business, by natural default, will regress to mediocrity and eventually extinction. So what stresses me as an investor, as a business person? As a business person, what stresses me most is that the more successful our businesses become, the more we're going to depart from the character traits, the factors that made us successful in the first place. That is what stresses me. So as we become more successful, we depart from the principles that made us successful. Loblaw is the most successful retailer in Canada simply because of a few character traits that it showed from day one. Number one, it's a company that is very entrepreneurial. And the key all of us would like to do is to be a part of a business and build a business that will eventually be everlasting. And the first criterion to be everlasting is that the business has to continuously be entrepreneurial. Loblaw has demonstrated that historically. Secondly, Loblaw has demonstrated the competitive drive, the competitive being number one attitude. And that's the reason why Loblaw is here today. And thirdly, Loblaw has always been a hard-working organization. And last but not least, and we're going to have this will be a recurring theme of my message here today, Loblaw has a purpose. So, as an investor in Loblaw, the second largest shareholder, representing 1 million Canadians, I'm imploring you, I'm begging you, I'm pleading with you, ladies and gentlemen, the responsibility you have to your families, to investors, to your company, is to make sure that those character traits that got you here in the first place, over time, as we become more successful, they do not recede. They become even more strong. The character traits of entrepreneurialism, being competitive, and lastly, being hardworking. At AIC, on the enterprise, our attitude is we're building businesses that we intend to make sure they are non-commoditized over time. And as we know, that's a tall order. We're building businesses that are everlasting. And I just went through the 4 component parts of entrepreneurialism: being competitive, hardworking, and building businesses that have a purpose. Starting off with the organization, we know how to go a little deeper to the staff. We're looking for staff who are, number one, smart and creative every day. Because we got here, we had to, in fact, these are my notes. And every speech I give, I always write my notes out on a report that I get every day. Every speech I give, right? Just to keep me anchored. So, because when we first started off, we started in business, and I'll tell you about this later, with no capital, 0 capital. And we had a mantra then: we have to substitute creativity for deep pockets. And we don't want to change now. Now that we're a little more successful, we still have to substitute creativity for deep pockets. So we're looking for staff. We have staff, smart and creative, energetic, hands-on. And this is a big one, hands-on. Because it seems as if it's a natural human frailty that as we progress in life, we become less hands-on. But initially, when we're really bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, when we're really optimistic, when we're really getting started, we're very hands-on. And over time, that hands-on trait recedes. So we want to make sure that our staff maintains their hands-on nature over time. We want to make sure that our staff has very, very high expectations of themselves, number one, and number two, the organization. So whatever issue, whatever challenge is thrown at us, our attitude is, bring it on, because we're either going to punch through it, go over it, under it, around it, but we're going to get to the other side. So we have high expectations of ourselves and our organization. And lastly, we want to make sure that we want to foster a sense of purpose in terms of our staff complement. Now, notice, both organization and staff, there's a commonality, purpose. And as I said, we're going to talk a little, that word purpose is going to be a recurring theme. Now, if in 1987, you had said to me, Michael, I was a mutual fund salesman then. Michael, you are energetic, you're smart and creative, you're bright. Here's a project for you, Michael. Go out and in the most competitive industry, the second most competitive industry in the world, the financial services industry. Build a business, build a money management business, which within the financial services industry is the most competitive department. So go out and build a business in the financial services industry, and within that context, build a money management business, and your competitors will be the likes of the Royal Bank of Canada, Scotiabank, Bank of Montreal, Sun Life, Manulife, the independent mutual fund companies, Fidelity. And in a 16-year period, make sure, Mike, that you build the largest privately owned mutual fund company within the context of that competitive landscape, managing money for over 1 million Canadians. At the end of that period, buy the largest commercial bank in Jamaica, and at the end of that period, a 16-year project, be an advisor to President William Jefferson Clinton. If someone had given me that project in 1987 when I just got started, what do you think I'd have said? What do you think I'd have said? What would you say? Impossible. Impossible. In fact, when I look back today, I scratch my head and say, how the hell did this happen? So the question is, how did it happen? That's the question. And as I pointed out in the video, everything that I've accomplished today is a function of one thing, my reputation. Everything that I've accomplished today is a function of my reputation. My reputation is my competitive advantage. And every day I go out in life and I do make sure that every day I do everything to augment my reputation and nothing to diminish it. So over time, it will become more enhanced. Question, really fundamental question to all of us is, how do you build a reputation? Because I think all of us should cognizantly go through the process of the following. I have a clean sheet of canvas here, and I am in control of what my reputation will eventually be. And I'm going to paint that canvas as I want it to be. So we should all go through that process. So how do we go about building a reputation? Well, we build a reputation by, number one, having a cause in life, standing for something, having a mission, having a purpose. Having a cause, a mission, a purpose, that is how you build a reputation. Secondly, applying character traits, which we'll get into. And thirdly, you build a reputation by thinking long term. Thinking long term. Because most of us in our Western society, we find it very difficult to think long term. So thinking long term is a competitive advantage for us. Now, you build a reputation, you build, as I said, by having a cause, by having purpose. Having purpose will make it much easier to be focused. And you need to be focused to be successful. Having a purpose will make it much easier to persevere. And we need to persevere through thick and thin to be successful. Having purpose will make it easier to be disciplined, will make it easier to be committed, will make it easier to be passionate. If you have a cause, it's easier to be passionate. If you stand for nothing, you'll fall for everything. Having purpose will make it easier to be courageous. Having purpose will make it easier to be loyal and have a positive attitude. So, that's background. When I first started in advising clients, I said to my clients, what are their needs? What are their needs? Because a good friend of mine, whom Galen met on Sunday, Donovan Lewis, said to me when I was very junior in business, Mike, you want to be successful in life? Find a need and fill it. Simple. So when I started in business, I thought, what are clients' needs? What are your needs financially? And I thought clients have basically three needs. Need number one, to preserve their capital, as I said earlier. Need number two, to get a real after-tax rate of return on their money. And need number three, to minimize taxes. Nobody likes to pay taxes. So those were the three needs I identified. So I started off with a clean sheet of paper. And I thought, okay, if you want to be successful, Mike, there's a three-step formula that will always work, guaranteed. And it's not only relevant to financial planning or investing. It's relevant, it's general to life. And it's the following. You want to be successful at being the best supermarketer, being the best parent, being the best pianist, swimmer. This three-step formula, guaranteed, will always work. Number one, identify a role model. Number one, identify a role model. Who do I know who has done the best possible job at parenting? I want to be the best parent possible. Who do I know? Identify a role model. Number two, ask the role model. No. Don't ask. Kneel at the role model's feet and say, role model, please, I beg you, how did you become so successful? And thirdly, don't be arrogant. Don't tweak the formula, the recipe. Do the same. So I thought, okay, I've identified three needs that we all have. Now, who are the role models in our society who have done a wonderful job at achieving those three needs? And I thought, the successful business people, the Warren Buffetts of the world, the Ken Thompsons of the world, the Galen Westons of the world. And for decades, I have been going across Canada, speaking about Mr. Weston way prior to meeting him. And I thought, these wealthy, successful business people, we all aspire to be financially like them. So have they used a certain set of principles that are common to all of them? And I identified some principles that are common to every single one of them. So as I go through these principles, think about the richest person that you know and see whether or not these principles would apply to that wealthy person. Number one, that person you're thinking of owns very, very few businesses. In fact, less businesses than you have fingers on one hand. Am I right? Yes? Galen, you have a dead crowd here. Am I right? Secondly, that person you're thinking of, that wealthy person, really understands those few businesses. Am I right? Thirdly, that person you're thinking of owns an excellent business that he or she understands, and that those few businesses are domiciled in strong long-term industries. Fourthly, that person you're thinking of became wealthy by making sure that their ownership attitude is for generations. Am I right? And lastly, that person you're thinking of used other people's money to become wealthy. Am I right? So those were the 5 common traits I noticed that were common to every single wealthy individual, from Bill Gates right down to the richest person in your community. So I thought, Mike, if you are going to be advising clients on how to become wealthy, you have to make sure that your advice is totally congruent to those principles. Doesn't that make sense? No? Then I noticed in the marketplace what was happening. Money managers, they were managing clients' money based on one principle, the principle of diversification. We have all heard of that, right? So typically, what I observed was that your typical money manager, mutual fund manager, would own 150 different businesses. And worse yet, he or she would turn those businesses over every 18 months. So I thought to myself, there's a huge disconnect here. The disconnect is that it is impossible to understand. That word understand is the key to investing. It is impossible to understand 150 new businesses every 18 months. So the methodology followed by 99% of all money managers is totally flawed, because that methodology violates the difference between an investor and a speculator, which is the word understand. So I thought, what we're going to do, Eureka, we're going to build a business that is dedicated to one principle. It's a principle of how wealth is created, and which we did. We focused, and having that principle, having that formula, we now set about to build AIC, and that's how we were able to grow the business in the midst of that hugely competitive landscape, from zero to today managing money for over 1 million Canadians. We have principles, and Mr. Buffett actually summarized it by saying, to be successful over the long run doesn't require stratospheric IQ. When I heard, I said, man, thank God for that. Unusual business insight or any particular inside information. What's needed, number one, is a sound. What's needed, number one, are principles, a sound intellectual framework for making decisions, number one. And number two, the ability to prevent one's emotions from corroding the framework. So we need two things. Number one, principles that we live by, and number two, stick to those principles. So in terms of, I can summarize by saying success is a function of three things. Number one, having knowledge. Number two, having experience. And number three, control of emotion. And it is with regards to control of emotion that most of us have a difficult time. Now, on my first day in high school, in Port Antonio, 7 years old, and the custos of the parish was giving a speech to the first-year student. And he said, boys and girls, the custos of the parish is equivalent to the lieutenant governor of the province. And he was addressing us first-year students. He said, boys and girls, opportunity knocks but once. So when that man made that statement, I was shuddering in my boots. Because I thought to myself, Mike, what if when opportunity comes knocking, that one opportunity in your life comes knocking, you're sleeping? Or you're dreaming, which I always do. Or you're playing marbles, which we didn't have TV then. Then your life is over. So for the next 14 years, I didn't dream, I didn't sleep, nor did I play marbles. I'm looking out for the opportunity. Until a friend of mine in 14 years later gave me relief. He said, Mike, every day there are opportunities. But the problem is, most of us, number one, don't identify the opportunities when they come floating by. And number two, even if we do identify them, we don't have the courage to grasp them and execute on them. So I said, why is that, Donovan? Why is that, Donovan? He said, simply because, Mike, when opportunities come by, invariably they are clad in a crisis. And when there's a crisis, how do you feel? Donovan, I feel terribly. That's it, Mike. The Chinese definition of the word crisis has two components. One, danger. And that's the reason, because when there's a crisis, you're focusing on the first component, the danger component. And that's the reason why I feel awful. But there's a second component, which is opportunity. So the successful amongst us, when there's a crisis, they always make crises synonymous with opportunities. So ladies and gentlemen, in 1999, on September the 2nd, 1999, I had the opportunity to test that theory. As you will recall, you may not recall this, but on September the 2nd, 1999, the Globe and Mail, Andrew Willis, wrote an article entitled, you can go back and look in history, AIC's Disadvantage, No Friends on Bay Street. In the article, it said, why do you think Loblaw stock is soggy? So back in 1999, because of what they call the AIC overhang. And what the article was saying, as you know, unit holders of the AIC Advantage Fund, Mike, the money manager, his philosophy is to buy few businesses, take big position in few businesses, and hold them for the long run. Now, those few businesses that he has bought, like TD Bank, we're the largest shareholder of TD Bank, Loblaw, we're the largest institutional shareholder of Loblaw, those businesses, they are old economy businesses. Clients are looking for the new thing, the new economy businesses, the high tech. So unit holders are redeeming from the Advantage Fund, the AIC Advantage Fund, and going into JDS Uniphase at 200 times earnings. So unit holders, this is the article now, going back to the article. Unit holders, you'll be best served to redeem now, because when Mike has to unload Loblaws and TD Bank, he's going to push those shares down even further, and you'll be cashing it at a lower price. Now think about it. You walk into work one day to be greeted by this article, in effect, cheerleading a run on your business. How would you feel? Awful. I felt awful. I cried for 1 hour. Then I thought, Mike, pull yourself up by the bootstraps. And remember, Mike, crisis equals danger plus opportunity. So, I said, where are the opportunities? Where are the opportunities? 1 hour later, it came to me, Eureka. Everybody's assuming that I'll have to sell, right, to meet redemptions. What if I didn't sell? What if I started buying? But one problem, you have to keep the cash to meet redemptions, so you can't buy through the mutual funds. So there are only two areas left to buy, two sources left to buy from. Number one, our own corporate coffers, and number two, the bank, borrow. So I called the Globe and Mail and said, Globe and Mail, please put this in the newspaper today so it's there forever. Today, you think we're going to sell? We're not selling, we're buying. In fact, today we bought 325,000 shares of Mackenzie Financial Corporation at $13.25. Please publish it, because we want for the world to know what our behavior was when there was a crisis. You judge your friends when times are bad. So for the next 6 weeks, we spent $100 million buying up more shares of Mackenzie Financial Corporation at an average price of $15. A year later, so we now own 25% of the company, 20% in the mutual funds, 5% in corporately. A year later, we were locked in battle with Investors Group to take the company over. At $30, we said, have it. We made $100 million over the course of 1 year. 100 million in profit, or unit holders made 400 million. That gave us the capital, the liquid capital, to go out and buy the bank. And my time is up, so I'll just speak quickly. The bank was also in a crisis. The bank, we bought at $3 a year and a half ago, March 2002. Today it's trading at $14.50. And it's still trading at less than 10 times earnings. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to leave you with, in summarizing, there are always opportunities pervasive in crises. It's for us to default back to principles and not let our emotions drag us into making poor decisions. So crisis equals danger plus opportunity. And that is what, as I said, have served us well over the years. So, in summary, I'd just like to say, to reinforce what I started off with, what are we expecting as shareholders of you? We're expecting for you to understand exactly how Loblaw got to this position today. For you to understand the nuances of being competitive, the nuances of being courageous, because Loblaw had to be competitive and courageous over the years to be where it is at today. For you to understand the nuances of being hardworking, because Loblaw had to be very hardworking to get here today. And the nuances of having a purpose, because Loblaw has always had a purpose. And the good news is that we are in control of our behavior. We are in control of our behavior. We are the ones who can apply how much smartness and creativity we want to apply. We're the ones who are in control of our being energetic. We're the ones who are in control of being hands-on. And we're the ones who are in control of the expectations we have of ourselves. So the great news is our history, so our behavior today will determine our history. And we are in control of our behavior. Thank you very much.
So it was said by Michael that one should kneel at one's hero or one's role model, right? Here's a President's Choice jacket for you. Wear it in good health, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Nice to see you.